Hello and welcome to Lockdown Economy Nepal, a local edition of a social nonprofit initiative to help small businesses and self-employed professionals overcome the challenges of the pandemic. In Nepal, it is being done in collaboration with NYEF Kathmandu chapter, a membership-based nonprofit organization dedicated to create outstanding entrepreneurs, and AlterContacts, a global think tank for sustainable development based in Amsterdam. My name is Susan Lal Manandar, host of the NTV series, and I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined us for this session. Today, my guest is Mr. Pavitra Gautam, who is the co-founder and CEO of Karkhana. Hello, Pavitra ji. How are you?
Thank you so much, Susan. I'm good. Trying to stay warm in this cold weather, not to catch any flu.
That's great. And we'll get into the lockdown economy discussion in a while, but let's get started with the introduction of Karkhana itself. So, Pavitra ji, please tell us when you established this company, what services you provide, and where are you based?
Oh my God, that's a lot of question in one question. So a small history about Karkhana is the word Karkhana means factory in Nepali and many other languages in this region. It means factory or a workshop. So Karkhana started out in 2012-13. We thought of starting out as a product design company in Nepal, kind of designing product for local problems. But we soon realized that Nepal does not have an ecosystem for innovations at that time. So we pivoted to being an social enterprise that works in education. So nowadays what we do is we try and build the ecosystem that we felt was lacking back then. The way we do that is we design learning experiences for young people. So Karkhana now is a social enterprise that works in a space where we design experiences, lesson plan for these young people. These are very hands-on experiential lessons through which they learn and deepen their understanding on topics of science, technology, engineering. Explains our work is Karkhana believes that makers today are the shapers of tomorrow, and we are the supporter of these young children in that journey.
That's great. And with your courses, you provide this blend of what students are studying at school and the practical application of that. And I was also going through your website and I came across this line which read, turning students into producers of technology from consumers. And I really love that line. And of course, that is only a part of what the services you provide. You also provide services in science, and your courses really go beyond just syllabus and textbooks. And like you said, you've been leading this change in 2012. So how was business for you before the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, so we, as an organization, we're about to expand our services quite a lot. And again, as you asked, what exactly we do as a service is so much more than just designing or like being an education sector. Like actually, you can imagine our work. For example, imagine that you're learning geometry in your school back in the days. I think you learn geometry with a paper and a pencil or like a pen and a ruler, right? But think of Karkhana's work as learning geometry with saw, wood, actually cutting things down in triangles, making shapes, connecting them together, making different shapes out of different shapes. So we try and convert the same learning experience into much more hands-on and experiential. And before the pandemic, we were working with around 6,000 students in all over Nepal. We were actually working with around 85 different schools in Nepal. And out of that, majority of schools were from Kathmandu Valley, the capital itself. And we had schools in other part of the country as well. And we were about to add few more cities. But yes, I mean, the pandemic happened and I think education sector is one of the most hit sector in this pandemic.
That is true, and because coming into 2020, when we're living in a pandemic, there's a lockdown and schools are not allowed to open. A lot of your services are catered to students, and some of them also involve training teachers as well. And when schools are not open and they're struggling to continue their regular classes, what kind of problems did the lockdown bring to your business?
I think because this pain grew slowly, we kind of adapted this pain. If we had known that this is what things were going to become, we'd have been very scared and overwhelmed. But when the lockdown started March, April, our initial thought was it's going to end in a couple of months, or like a couple of, maybe max 3 months, right? But and the way we tried to handle that was we started to reduce our costs. And something that reminded us in the initial days of the pandemic was we kind of compared it with the difficulty we as an organization had to go through when we had earthquake and the blockade in 2015, because that experience taught us that it's very important to prepare yourself in the rainy days. So we always had this mindset of having a small buffer budget, kind of planning, having a this kind of crisis plan. So we're ready to handle the situation for a month or two. But when this pandemic actually elongated, we started, and in the beginning of the pandemic, we actually trained a lot of teachers in terms of transforming their classes into digital format. So we started to train them in how to use like digital tools, how do you engage your students virtually, how do you design a lesson plan and incorporate digital components to it. I think in the the first 3 to 4 months, we almost trained around 2,000 teachers altogether through virtual mediums. We're one of the very first organizations to do that. But when the pandemic elongated, when the lockdown elongated, we started to look for other alternate revenue sources as well.
All right, and what other strategies did you incorporate during this time to stimulate your revenue?
So one of the big challenges we had to overcome was all our classrooms or experiences were very hands-on, and they were designed to be delivered in a physical space. So you can imagine our classes were times when students would have to actually get the material in their hands. There's a facilitator who supports this learning process. So there's this kind of environment in the program, right? So when the pandemic happened, it was really difficult for us to redesign or rethink the program and try and deliver it virtually. But after a couple of months of like research and development, we designed a re-engineered version of our program where we sent the materials and the kits and the learning materials to students' homes, and the lessons and the activity were delivered through the virtual medium. So we actually had to redesign the program where kids could actually learn the classes, get the experience that we had designed, but staying at home.
Great. And when you adopted the virtual platform, what kind of response did you get from the students and schools and even the parents?
I think it was very confusing, and because I guess in the education sector, everyone is very confused because I think we're in this phase where we have not completely accepted that this is going to be the new normal, but also we kind of know that this is going to go for some time, right? I guess there's a lot of highs and lows in terms of delivering the program. I guess this is the first time when parents and the students get to experience how actually remote learning, distance learning happens. And to be very honest, there are very big challenges about making distance learning, virtual learning very effective. And because we have never done it before, trying to make it effective comes with a lot of challenges. And sometimes the challenges are very like emotional challenges. For example, I'm sure there's so many students, and even yourself, were going through a lot of learning processes. There's this feeling that I understand that teacher is trying, but I don't feel the class. There's something missing about this process. I don't know what, but there's so many things. Like there's this missing like breaks that you have, like going to the canteen and getting a cup of tea with your friends, like the walks and the travels that you do every day, going to your college schools and coming back from there. So there's all these other elements which made the learning much more enriching, and like taking away a lot of these physical programs also took away a lot of these elements. And I think we have not still been able to adapt in this situation. But again, the initial program, the reactions were very confusing, but it's been a couple of months now. I think after the Dasai and Tiyar, now we see a lot of much increased adoption and acceptance, both in students as well as in parents, about, okay, maybe like this is how we need to think for some time. This is good for everyone for the time being. So we see a lot more acceptance at the time being.
That's really nice to hear, because a lot of the talk right now is, instead of moving back to normal like before, it is about moving into the new normal. So Pavitra ji, do you have any competitors in this business?
Uh, I'd say that we don't have a very direct competition about organization doing the exact same thing. But one very funny and tricky part being in an education sector in the way we are is we compete with the dance classes, we compete with the music classes, because for schools, the kind of work we do is actually extracurricular and it's not exactly curricular. So there's this a lot of conversations about how do we make sure that schools understand our work as not as something extra, but this is a part of the learning process. And I think in a country like ours, probably in the region itself, the justification of a good education, actually we tend to get that justification from the certificates and the mark sheet that we get at the like after the exam, but we don't tend to assess our learning through skills, through the experiences. So there's this lot of changes that needs to happen. But again, as I said, because we have to compete with this mindset, we tend to compete with a lot of extracurricular activities. So of course, sometimes it's very difficult to find a time. The schools have to choose between, okay, do we do the dance class, or do we give that time to Karkhana to run these kinds of hands-on learning like activities? So of course, there are these competitions, but it's been a couple of years, I think 2 or 3, we have started to see a lot more organizations who are working in designing hands-on learning experiences. There are organizations who are working with robotics and introducing robotics in schools. They're introducing like computer skills, designing skills in schools in a much more hands-on and experiential way. In that sense, I see competition growing. But as of now, there's a very indirect and very confusing competition that we have to go through.
All right. And if we talk about the situation right now in Nepal, things are slowly opening up. Services that were initially blocked are now slowly opening. And I also saw a bunch of grade 12 students going for their exams this morning. So in this situation, how is your business performing?
Uh, I'd say very difficult. I mean, just to talk in numbers, I think the overall revenue has dropped by almost 80-90%, whereas the expenses has only come down by 50%. So there's this amount of loss that we have to go through. But again, we can't just hold things up, right? There's a lot of fixed cost that has to continue. But again, we're trying as much as possible to streamline the expenses, trying to keep our expenses as low as possible. But something that we're again trying to do is to continue the flow of economy. One big challenge that I see in the pandemic, not just in our business, not just only in our sector, but in the economy itself, is when there is pause in terms of flow of money, then there's this cascade effect in the entire market, because when you don't get the money from your client, then you can't pay your vendor. And when that vendor doesn't get money from you, the vendor probably cannot pay its own vendor. So there's this chain effect that's actually killing the economy at the point. So something that we're trying is, of course, we can't spend as much as we used to in the past, but we should continue to pay up our people, even if it's a lesser amount. We should continue to pay our vendors, even if it's a smaller engagement. So I think we're trying to scale down the overall program and the activity, but we're trying to continue in all possible aspects. Because if we do that, then when we continue to get back to the normal economic levels, then it would not be difficult to expand that. Because if we cease some economic activities at the point, then I guess that it would be very difficult to kickstart everything from the zero.
Yeah, and like I said, right now, businesses are slowly starting to open up, and there are also talks of a vaccine happening, but still the future is very uncertain. So what is the outlook for Karkhana for the next 3 months?
To be very honest, before the pandemic, we used to at least have plans. At least have quarterly plans. We used to have quarterly plans. Then we used to have half-yearly plans. At this time, we're actually having like monthly plans, and we think that it's really difficult to have a long form plan. But regardless of that, we're something that we're hoping is we're trying to continue our online classes and trying to integrate the way we're trying to teach our experiential lesson into online mediums. We're trying to expand that. There's been, I think, in total of 7-8 schools who have been working with us to try and this new format of digital hands-on learning experience with us. But we are also starting our one programs that directly happen through us. So we're also opened up registration for parents directly, so they can directly register their children in our programs. So we're hoping that this would help us sustain and keep our operations going for some time. And in the meantime, we're looking for some clean policy directives and at least clean directives from the concerned authorities in terms of Ministry of Education, in terms of local governments, in their plans of how they're actually thinking of opening up the education system. I guess the way I look at today's like grade 12 examination is a good step, but in the meantime, I feel like the preparation needs to be much more firm and concrete. So I think it's wait and watch, but continue to walk. That's kind of game going on.
Great. And this is my final question to you. You've already sort of touched upon it. If there are 3 things in your business that you need help with right now, what would they be?
I guess probably similar to any other business, any other SMEs at this point is a very easy availability of soft loans. I mean, loans with a very low interest. I think that would help a lot at this point because when the revenue has dropped dramatically, I mean, very, very much, I think having access to loans would help ease up the difficulty to some extent. Another thing that I think would help at this point is some kind of support package from the government. I mean, there's so much more support government can actually do to help SMEs at this point. It could be tax exemption for a couple of months to like half year or a year following this pandemic, because there's a lot of suffering that an organization had to do. Maybe, I mean, all forms of tax exemptions or some kind of subsidy in terms of operation would help a lot. I mean, there could be subsidies in electricity, there could be subsidies in communication. I mean, there's a lot of subsidies that governments or local governments can do at this point. And lastly, something that I expect, not from the government, but from the business community itself, is a attitude to look out for each other. Because I think this is the point where you're not trying to save one shop, but you're trying to save the bazaar, right? That's how I understand it. Because this is a time when just thinking that I need to save my business would be very counter. I don't think that's a right approach to take. Whereas I think this is the time where all of us have to come together and help each other out in terms of helping, like finding their good talent, helping people transition into other kind of businesses, or like making sure that everybody is earning at least some amount. Every other business is at least earning some amount. Spread, if you have large orders, maybe spread it out to a couple of businesses so that every business is getting small bit of it. So I guess I think this is a testing times for all of the businesses and coming together and watching out for each other. I think, but again, that's the kind of motto NYF is also going towards. So I think that's the 3 things, I guess.
Great, and I completely agree with you. This is truly a time where businesses need to stick together and help each other out. And I hope this interview series itself is very useful to you to do that, and also the other things you just mentioned. So all the best for that. And thank you, Pavitra ji. Thank you for coming on board and sharing your insights.
Thank you so much. And yes, I mean, education sector has been very weird. I think being part of this sector has made me realize that education is very important, but not as a knowledge, but as a skill and attitude. So I think I just wish everyone stay safe, stay healthy. And again, thank you, Susan, for inviting to share some of the ideas. And thank you again for all of it.
Thank you again, Pavitra ji, and thank you to everyone who joined us for this session. If you have any questions for Pavitra ji, you can find his contact in the description, or you can leave a comment in this video. I invite you to like this video and share with your friends, and follow our page, NYF Kathmandu Chapter Facebook page. A recording of this video will be present in the AlterContacts YouTube channel, so please subscribe to our channel. There are playlists of videos where entrepreneurs and small business owners from different parts of the world have shared their insights. We'll have many more interviews like this in the upcoming weeks. Stay tuned, and goodbye.